What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Flash Season 6, Episode 13, Grodd Friended Me. So, kind of an odd title, but interesting premise, with Grodd wanting to reform and all of that. I will say it does feel a little weird that it's taken 4 episodes for Barry to really start feeling the ramifications of, everything has changed now after this crisis and everything's different. That really feels like something that should have been addressed for the first couple episodes. But again, they were setting up the rest of the season. They're setting up, whoever Eve McCullough is supposed to be, or Eva, I don't remember. They're setting up her character and all of that, so that took precedent, which means we didn't have time to address all of these changes that have happened since Crisis. So, finally addressing that now, working with Grodd to get him out of the, basically, coma that they put him in. It's an interesting concept, and I liked how they handled it. Grodd was not just like, "Oh, I'm changed," and Barry goes, "Oh, okay, cool," and helped him out. Like, there was mistrust. It took Grodd kind of convincing Barry, and there was a good explanation, because of how powerful his mind is. It wasn't affected when Crisis happened, and whenever the universes all merged together, he still kept the memories of what happened. So, a little convoluted and a little convenient, I guess, but because of how powerful his mind is, I'm willing to buy it. Probably wouldn't be able to just be like, "Oh, this random person has memories of what happened before Crisis." That wouldn't really work. But a gorilla that has such high brain capability that he has psychokinesis, I'll buy that. So that was all pretty interesting. The stuff with Iris is okay. Again, apparently McCullough, whether it's Eve, I don't remember. But I don't remember if I called this or not. I didn't really know if I could trust this woman. There was just this hint of, well, something pulled Iris into this mirror dimension, right? So that would make me think that she had something to do with it. And so sure enough, she did. And apparently she's the one that sent the mirror Iris out there. I don't really understand. I don't get it. I guess she's trapped in there, and if she leaves, it burns her. So I guess she pulled Iris in to basically try to get somebody to help her get out so she doesn't die when she steps out of the mirror. I guess. I don't know. I'm really put off by a lot of this because it feels sort of out of left field. First of all, everything with the mirror Iris doesn't make any sense to me because it feels like Barry and Joe would know that something's up with her. But neither of them really suspect. Like, she keeps blowing up on them out of nowhere. She keeps having these moments. She's like, "I need this now." Or she gets mad for something stupid. Again, all of the changes that happened that one episode where Barry's just like, "Wait, you can cook now? You know Italian now?" Really? There's not a question of, okay, hang on a minute. Maybe this is not Iris. There's no question of that. They're just like, "Oh, that's weird. Well, living a good life." So it just seems odd to me that there's no suspicion on her whatsoever, even though there clearly should be. Now again, it looks like her, it sounds like her, she has a lot of the memories that Iris does, but there's just certain things that she's doing that would alarm me if this were my loved one. Something's not right. Something has changed, and I don't know what it is. So that's a little frustrating. Also, the woman playing Eva McCullough, I don't know. She's been okay. Like, her acting's not been bad, but the acting whenever she stuck her arms out of the mirror was pretty bad because it was supposed to be pain because her arms were burning. But when she pulled them back in, she's like, "Ah, ah, ah, ah." I'm like, "Are you laughing about this?" I don't know. It was odd. Like, it didn't sound like a pained expression. It sounded more like she was like, "Oh, oh my gosh, what?" It's just strange. But then we get to the worst part of the episode, because on the outside of what's going on with Barry and Grodd is Chester. Woo, Chester! Oh God, and I didn't like him when he first showed up. He was very clearly. Not that he's playing his part badly. He's playing the part of one of those goofy, over the top YouTubers that has their little catchphrases, and they're all like, "Oh, check me out, I'm so goofy, guys, don't you like watching this?" He captures that perfectly. I just don't like that. I don't like that type of personality. So whenever I saw that he was going to be a bit more involved, I'm thinking, well, crap, I don't want that. I don't want to see more of Chester. but it's being forced upon me. And then he, does the thing, which, granted, it does end up helping Barry in the end, and he is very smart and all of that, but he's sort of like forcing himself into the conversation. He's forcing himself into, oh, I can fix this for you. It's like, hang on a minute. You're just a random guy that they helped save, and they don't necessarily want you to be just stepping all over their territory. Even if you may know some stuff, let them ask you first. Because that's the polite thing to do, not the rude, I'm just going to do this because I know how to do it. Like, it's not right. And then what he does ends up endangering Barry's life, even if it does help Grodd in the end. It's still not right what he did. And then to make matters even worse, he throws some race baiting in there. I'm just like, are you kidding me? We're really going to have this story where he's like, yeah, I made a mistake one time when I was in school, and then the guy told me because I'm black, like, people like me don't get second chances. Are you kidding me? You're really just going to throw out there, yeah, I feel bad for me because I'm black. I wanted to punch him. I'm just like, are you serious? And then what's even funnier, and I don't know if the writers did this intentionally or not, probably not, because the writers of the show are probably uber liberal, and they probably look up to LeBron James like he is one of the greatest people alive. He calls himself the LeBron James of science or whatever, and it's hilarious because LeBron James also does a lot of race baiting. So I'm like, that actually fits even more perfectly than you understand, because you're saying it as if you're such a great person, because he's not. Anytime you use your race to get somewhere, it's not right. It's not okay. But of course, it's okay if the minorities do that. It's okay if the minorities get a step up because of their race. No, nobody should get a step up or a step down because of their race. That's part of the problem that we're having, is all of these racists on either side are making it all about race, when it should have nothing to do with that. So that really put me off, because I was already not a fan of Chester's personality or anything, but then he throws that in there, and it's supposed to be like this really meaningful thing, like, oh, I feel bad for him. Like, no, I don't. You're trying to guilt trip here, and that's stupid. And it's selfish, and you should be gone because you put Barry's life in danger. So, yeah. I'm really worried because, honestly, The Flash, I'm not used to getting this frustrated with elements of storytelling, but ever since Crisis, it feels like The Flash has just really delved into a lot of stories that I'm more used to seeing on shows like Supergirl or Arrow. These really poorly written stories that either are hammering a message in that doesn't need to be hammered in, or is just actually the opposite of the message that it should be hammering in, or you got stupid relationship stuff going on. I'm not a fan of any of this. And that's why The Flash has been one of my favorite Arrowverse shows, probably my favorite Arrowverse show out of all of them, because if it did tackle that stuff, it wasn't very heavy-handed most of the time. There were some episodes here and there, but they were very few and far between. This has been a couple episodes now where it's just very poorly written, and the characters are not meshing very well together, and it feels like the writers are sort of lost. Like, they don't really know what to do now that Crisis is done. So, yeah, I don't know, I'm getting less and less excited to watch The Flash, and that's not something I'm used to thinking. Most of the time I'm like, oh, The Flash, cool. The one of the good shows that I can watch in the midst of all the other crappy ones, like Batwoman and Supergirl and Arrow and last season, Legends of Tomorrow, the one that I watched previously with Mona and all that crap in it. I don't get it. I don't understand what happened. But anyways, that's it for this first episode. On to the next one. And now episode 14, Death of the Speed Force. Interesting. Just the different twists this is starting to take. Apparently what happened in Crisis. I honestly thought it was going to be more so related to what Ramsey did, infecting Barry. That's what ended up killing the Speed Force. But the fact that it turns out to be basically the stuff that Barry used, I guess the Spectre's energy, to save the universe is what killed the Speed Force. I guess in that way it does make it a little less Barry's fault, because if Barry did what he did to stop Ramsey, allowing him in so he could also infect Ramsey at the same time, it would seem a little like, okay, well, you essentially caused this by allowing that to happen. And yes, he stopped Ramsey in the process, but kind of small scale. They probably could have found some other ways around it. He didn't have to let himself be infected by Ramsey. He could have possibly talked to everybody and been like, hey, we need to figure this out. But because of what happened during Crisis and because of how, again, he saved the universe because he took the Spectre's power and was able to access the Speed Force through it, and that's what caused it, it does make it a lot less like, okay, we can't really blame Barry for that happening, because who's going to blame him for the death of the Speed Force when that's what ended up saving the universe? So, I don't know if that's why they decided to make that the reason or if that was just always the plan, but that's kind of what I thought whenever they revealed that was the reason for it. But, I mean, overall, yeah, just a lot of very interesting pieces involved in this as well. The stuff with Iris is still a little frustrating that, Wally finally is the first one to step up and say, hey, something's weird about Iris. And then Camilla finds out too late. I don't know what happened at the end. I remember that gun. I think it's the same gun that Iris was working on earlier this season. I don't know if that just transported her to the mirror dimension. And if so, does that mean that there's going to now be a mirror version of Camilla out there as well? I don't know. I don't know exactly what's happening, but it just feels like everybody's taking way too long to be like, something's weird about Iris, right? Like, even in this one, when Barry's talking to her, she's like, maybe you don't have to be the Flash anymore. Again, that's not something Iris would just say. She would be a lot more understanding. She would be consoling Barry. She'd be like, I'm sorry about what happened. She wouldn't just be like, oh, well, maybe just stop being the Flash. Like, that's not something Iris would say. And yet Barry's just like, do you really mean that? Come on, Barry. Like, it just, I don't know. It feels like everybody's being written a little dumber this season just so we don't have them figure out this is not Iris too soon. So that's still a little frustrating. But the stuff with Nash is pretty interesting to me. And I didn't talk about it in the last episode, but of course he is seeing all these different versions of Harrison Wells. So it's kind of a question of why is that? But of course one of those versions of Harrison Wells is the Eobard Thawne version. So that one somehow manages to take over him. And this one, I don't know why, because we saw first he was seeing Harry, and then I think he was seeing... I think that was Sherlock, maybe? I don't know. And then at the end of the last episode, all of a sudden the glowing red eyes showed up, so that was very clear indication that he was coming, and then in this episode he fully takes over Nash. But yeah, I don't know why this is happening, because he appears to be the only one being affected by the fact that he's seeing all these different versions of Harrison Wells. I don't know if they're just inside of his mind and they're taking him over. I don't really get that, and I was hoping we would explore it a bit more, but they just sort of didn't really touch on that at all. By the end of this episode, they just locked him up in the pipeline. They're just like, all right, we'll deal with him later. But yeah, I do want to know why he's the only one experiencing all these different versions from the past multiverse inside of himself. Like, if there were any doppelgangers that bled over, like Cisco said, most of the time they were there, but then the whatever is called the degeneration would take one of them or both of them out. So in this case, it seems like there weren't doppelgangers of Harrison Wells showing up on the Earth because all of them, for some reason, ended up inside of Nash. So I don't understand why. I assume there's going to be some weird multiversal mumbo-jumbo that they're going to throw out as to explain why. But I hope it's at least a good enough reason to where I can buy it and I'm not asking, well, why is he the only one that this happened to? But anyways, yeah, seeing him turn into Thawne by the end of it, I mean, I like Thawne as a villain. I do think he can be a little overused, but I mean, just watching Tom Cavanagh, however you say it, watching him as Thawne is probably my favorite performance in the show as a whole, just because he's very good at switching on that intimidating, like, just the soft-spoken, like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, he doesn't have to yell, he doesn't have to scream, because he's intimidating as is. So I always appreciated that about him as a villain. So yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen there. Cisco, he seems to be dealing with all of this stuff with the crisis and the changes in the crisis. He seems to be taking it a little bit harder than everybody else, so I don't know if that's setting up for something where he's don't know, going to make some changes by the end of the season to really focus. I mean, he already went on a little bit of a tour to track down all of the, I guess, I don't know what to call them, the blips in the crisis. Yeah, I don't really understand exactly what he's going through, and I don't know if it's going to have any bearing on the story later. But clearly there is something going on there underneath the facade that he's putting up of just like, oh yeah, I'm just trying to help the team. It's like, no, there's something else happening here. Um, let's see, Wally. I liked having Wally back. I mean, he's not sticking around for whatever reason. I don't know why. It feels like they've just. I don't know if the actor is just not interested in doing the show or if they just can't find a reason to keep him around. But it just feels like Wally, ever since the season where he was on the show, ever since he became a speedster, he's not stuck on any show for more than like maybe half a season, because I think he was only on Legends for that one half of a season and then he was gone and then he just disappeared and we never saw him again. But whenever he's here, I mean, I like having him on the show. I like the camaraderie between him and Barry, the relationship between him and Joe. I like all of that stuff, and I think he's a good actor, so I don't really know why we don't have him around more. Granted, I will admit this whole, like, the spiritual journey that he's going on and stuff, I will admit it probably would get old after a few episodes, so maybe it's a good thing that he's not sticking around too much, because this whole like, oh, I've got a metaphor and I've got a story and a fable for every single thing that we talk about, that probably would have gotten old pretty quick, so maybe it's a good thing, but no, I mean, I liked him in this episode, though. His powers are pretty cool, too. It seems a little bit different than Barry, because he can, like, project himself around, like, not the splitting himself into multiple beings like we've seen Barry do before with what's it called? Is what led to Savitar being created. I don't remember exactly what that power is called, but it's more so like he's doing it, but it's like all still him. It's not like he's creating different versions of himself. It's more like he's projecting versions of himself. I don't know. It was pretty cool to watch though. The effect that they did was pretty well done. So yeah, I mean, overall, it was perfectly fine. The villain, I mean, not really all that interesting. Her power was a little gruesome, and I was kind of like, okay, this seems like a power that would be very OP, where she could just be like, all right, stop time, catch you in the bubble, turn you forward, you're dead. Turn you forward, you're dead. It seems like it would take a sneak attack to make sure that she didn't kill anybody, but of course, if that were the case, then the show would be over very quickly, so they had to find a way around it. And then, what was the other thing? I guess the other big thing was just Barry dealing with the death of the Speed Force and the impact it has on him. And I mean, it's pretty apropos that, of course, it's going to hit him the hardest because the Speed Force looks like his mom, so it's like he's losing his mom again. And it's always very sad, you know. Anytime I've seen this scene where he's losing his mom, always breaks my heart because Grant Gustin's fantastic actor, and yeah, I mean, it's just an emotional scene to see him losing somebody that he cares about. And even though it's not actually his mom, it's just the Speed Force as his mom. It's still played up very, very well, and it got to the emotions. So, but yeah, that's about it for this episode. So on to the third. See you there. And now episode 15, The Exorcism of Nash Wells. So good episode. I enjoyed the premise of just Thawne trying to take over Nash's body. Again, I feel like they haven't really touched on why Nash is the only person supposedly on this earth that we're seeing, at least, that has all of the consciousnesses of the other versions of himself inside of one body. I don't know why that is. We haven't really touched on that. But I mean, overall, it was perfectly fine. I mean, I enjoyed seeing them go into his brain and really try to figure things out. Even the one scene where it was Thawne pretending to be Nash, you had to question it. You really had to wonder, is this the truth? Is this really Nash, or is this Thawne manipulating them? So whenever Cisco puts the thing on and starts the EMP, you kind of feel like, okay, I wasn't sure what to believe throughout that entire conversation, so good for keeping me on my toes, I guess. But yeah, so it's just an interesting concept, and obviously, you know, as they said at the end of this, Thawne's I don't even know what to really call it, but essentially he's still out there somewhere, which makes sense because it really feels like Thawne is kind of the looming big bad over this entire show. Again, they do utilize him a little too much, but it kind of makes sense because of the fact that he killed Barry's mom. He is the ultimate rival for Barry. So at least he's not really been the main villain for like most of the past few seasons. Like he's been involved, he's been around, he's been in there, but he's not been the main villain for any season. So I feel like they're probably saving him for whatever the last season is going to be because I think they just got renewed for season 9. So I don't know when the last season is going to be. But I feel like he'll be the final. Like that's how they're gonna go out. Is Thawne will be the final bad guy that Barry has to take on, and it feels like it makes sense for that to happen. So but what else? What else? So there was everything going on with Nash. You had Killer Frost. She's going up against the light thing, and she got hurt because Barry made the dumb decision. I like the fact. I mean, because I was even thinking, like, Barry, seriously? I was really worried because I had the same issue with Nora last season. Like, you're making a dumb decision, and it's obviously a dumb decision, but thankfully, it didn't last long for Barry to go, okay, I know. I screwed up. I get it. I should have listened. And he really means it. You know, it wasn't anything like I felt like with Nora last season where she's like, I'm sorry, I'll do better. And then the next episode, I knew she was not going to do better because that's just how they wrote her. For Barry, I really do believe, yes, he jumped into this because he felt like he could help. He tried the Velocity X, but it didn't work. And so I really do feel like, okay, well, now he thought he had an answer and that answer didn't work. So I really do trust the fact that he's probably next time he is faced with that situation, he's not going to make the same dumb decision and try to jump in, even when people are telling him don't do it. So I really do hope that's the case. We'll see. But as far as Nash, his story is concerned, you know, seeing what happened to the Allegra on his Earth, actually named Maya, I mean, it is a sad story, and it's very. I do wonder if she'll come back, like if somehow she didn't actually die there. I don't know, just because of the fact that you didn't see the body, there is that question. Like if she'd gotten shot in the forehead, then I would be like, okay, she's dead. But because she fell down a deep dark ravine that we don't know what's at the bottom, there's gonna be that question, especially because this is a comic book superhero TV show. There's always going to be the question, you know, like anytime there's a show like this, you don't see the body, there's a chance they're still alive. So I don't know. I'm wondering if somehow Allegra is going to be connected to that or anything along those lines. But it was a very heartbreaking story because of the fact that he wanted to be like, no, it was her fault. She's the one that didn't let go of the thing and grab with the other hand. She's the one that made that decision. But ultimately, it's what he taught her from when she was little. She trusted him, and it was always about the treasure. So she would much rather make that decision and not let go of it, even if it meant she falls to her death. So because he finally realizes that, he's able to really take responsibility and control of the situation instead of letting Thawne take control of him. So it was a good resolution, and I feel like it made sense in the sense of the show at least. So outside of that, though, there's also the light based villain. Feels like there's been a lot of them. I don't understand really why. It's odd to me that McCullough, like Ava, is apparently she has mirror powers. I don't know why, but it also seems like her husband is very interested in light-based villains because they had the Doctor Light, and then they had, you know, her with the. I don't know exactly how her powers work, but essentially in the light she could burn things, and then they had the ultraviolet girl, which bends light waves. So I don't really understand why the connection to light. I hope they explain that at some point because it seems very out of left field that they're both connected with that. But we see at the end of the episode, Camilla and Iris, or their mirror versions, apparently got this little refractor thing that Ava wanted. I wish we could have seen how that happened. Maybe it did, and I just looked at my phone for a second when they did it. But it seemed very odd that while all of that was going on at the GCPD, somehow they managed to sneak in and snag it. Like, it doesn't seem likely that it could happen, but maybe it did. Joe, again, in this episode being stupid because he's like, wait a minute, Iris is not comforting Barry. That's weird. And Wally did just tell me in the last episode something seems off about her. But I'm just going to sit here with a puzzled look on my face instead of actually asking a question and actually going, wait a minute, that seems off. How many episodes are we just going to see a character look at Iris like, well, that's odd, and then just not say anything about it and just move on like everything's okay? It's starting to piss me off. And I know we're getting closer to the end of the season, so I'm sure in the next couple episodes they'll probably finally be like, hey, wait a minute, maybe you should ask about this. But I feel like it's just gone on for way too long. And honestly, it really, now that I'm thinking about it, it's been 6 episodes since Iris was taken into the mirror dimension and the new Iris showed up. So it's really, in the grand scheme of things, not actually been that long. But I think because they're making it so obvious that this Iris is not the real one, I'm kind of getting frustrated, and I feel like it's going on too long because it's so obvious. I mean, if this Iris was still acting like herself, but was just better at being manipulative, instead of anytime she didn't get what she wants, she starts yelling and screaming and like, you need to give me this now, and I can't believe you're not doing this. Like, that's not Iris. And yet nobody's figuring this out. If she was more along the lines, like, whenever she's trying to convince Barry not to be the Flash, if she was, like, cuddling on him, it's like, look, we've done this for a long time. You deserve to be happy. We deserve a future together. I mean, I'm not wanting you to stop being the Flash either, but maybe we should look at this as a good thing. Like, something along those lines instead of just, maybe it's time to stop being the Flash. Like, right off the bat. No lead up to it. That's just the first thing out of her mouth. And Barry, really? Do you really feel that way? You really think Iris feels that way? You really think that would be the first thing out of her mouth? God. Oh. So that's really starting to get frustrating. But, yeah, what was it? What was the... I had a point to all of this, though. And now I've lost it. Oh, what it reminded me of. It was something that was playing throughout the entire episode. It was playing through my brain. How this could have been utilized better. First of all, if this story had gone on longer, we really could have played with the idea of all of these people being replaced with their mirror elements. But because the first half of the season was so focused on Ramsey, and then we introduced this part in the second half, we've had less time to really play with this idea. And what it makes me think of is the LMDs from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where all the people were being replaced with life model decoys, basically robots. It was very interesting because there was a question of how many of the team has been replaced by these androids that are very lifelike. It's a scary thought, and it's something they could really play with if they had more time with it. And if they had maybe given us a little less to go off of. Like, if we didn't see Iris get sucked into the mirror, or... I don't know. I'm just thinking about how they could have made it a bit more of a mystery if we didn't see Camilla get shot with a gun. Like, all of these little things that we start to see throughout the season, it's just like, holy crap. Maybe we do see Iris get sucked into the mirror, but then we start to see maybe a couple other people acting a little odd, like that maybe they're keeping a secret. Now we're questioning, is there something they're hiding? Is there something that they're doing that they don't want anybody to know? Like, maybe Camilla is acting weird around Cisco, but then it turns out she was just planning a surprise party, and it turns out Cisco is actually the mirror dimension. Like, I like the idea of you don't know who to trust and you don't know who's been replaced. I like that type of story, and I feel like they wasted that here, because we clearly see everything that's happening. We clearly see that Ava is the one running the show. We see who's being replaced with these fake versions of themselves, and it just, I don't know, it takes a lot of the intensity and the thrill out of what's going on, because I feel like I'm just sitting here going, okay, well, I mean, I know basically everything now, so it's just waiting for the team to finally catch on to what's happening. And I feel like the show has done it before. Whenever they revealed that Thawne was the bad guy very early on, or Jay Garrick, I think, what was his real name? I'm trying to remember now. Zoom, I think, was the villain name. Like, whenever they revealed it was Jay Garrick first, and we're just like, oh no, it's Jay Garrick, and then the team doesn't find out for a few more episodes after that. I feel like they always seem to do that to us. It's show who the villain actually is, show what's actually happening to the audience, and then a few episodes later, then the team figures out. And for those few episodes until the team figures out, we're just kind of sitting here like, somebody catch on, please. Like, somebody catch on to these weird little things that you should be noticing. And it's a weird writing style, and I don't necessarily, it's one of the weaker sides of the Flash overall as a series. So, but with that being said, I think that's it for this episode. Pretty sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, that's it for these 3 episodes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3? Let me know. We could talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Flash reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.